The mailman doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. A very happy new year to everybody and a very happy new year to New York Knicks and Toronto Raptors fans. We're hopping on today to talk about the big trade that went down yesterday. As you can see, I'm representing both brands here to talk about this trade. A few other bits to mention as we go, but that is the major news. Chris, how were your holidays? Good times?
It's fantastic, and what better way to, kind of break up the mundane family vacation. Eventually you kind of need a little bit of sports to get you out of I don't know anyone else traveling right now. I know it's difficult. You go home, visit the parents, you need a little escape, and the Knicks provided that for me. We finally got the trade, man. I'm excited. I knew you were more excited than me. You've been waiting for something like this. This is probably the second splashiest trade in the last decade.
I mean, like it's
trying to think about it.
Yeah,
but
like
this seems like the biggest one in a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty big move from them. And when I first saw it, how it was first represented by Woj on Twitter had me a little bit worried. When I saw they had traded Barrett, Quickley, and draft considerations just for OG Anunoby, I was kind of like, we've just given away our two major assets and probably a couple of first round picks just to get OG Anunoby. That had me a little bit worried. Obviously, then more came out. Achiuwa was also included on the deal. We had only given up 1 second round pick. And then when you look at it that way, you're like, yeah, this is actually a really smart deal from the New York Knicks to get a guy that they believe is a better fit around Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. They think OG Anunoby is the guy they wanted RJ Barrett to be. Emmanuel Quickley is clearly a guy that they did not want to pay, so the only options were lose him for nothing or pay him money they didn't want to pay him. So, yeah, I mean, nice bit of business from the Knicks. Surprisingly clever, smart bit of business, but I also think it's leading up to another move before the deadline.
Probably. So all in all, just you finally broke it down. You finally had time to think about it. What are you going to grade this for the Knicks? How do you feel about what they got out of it, the value and everything? I know you're a tough grader, so
I'm a tough grader. I'm gonna give them a B+ on this. I think it could work out better, but obviously, like, they've left a big hole in their bench scoring. They've obviously traded off their kind of two main assets in terms of draft, in terms of trading different guys. But the fact that they got a guy like OG, who was apparently worth 3 or 4 first round picks last year without giving up a first rounder, that's obviously a really smart move from them. And I think especially if we are able to work another move or maybe another couple of moves before the trade deadline, I think it could definitely work out. But I do like the fit of OG alongside Brunson and Randle. Thinking we get enough scoring from those two guys. OG comes in as a solid shooter and a really good defender. That's a big plus.
Yeah. All right. I got to get my grading straight then, because I have this slated as an A. Is an A for you like an all-time fleece, like a Gobert for 1 million picks, or like old Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett for 1 million picks? Is that the only A?
No, I just like it. Like let's see how it plays out. Like on paper, this wouldn't be the first trade that looked great on paper and then didn't work out as expected. And I also think what comes next is also important. If this is the end of the Knicks business, you're not really thinking too highly of it. It's more the fact that they still have the assets to make another move on from this.
Yeah, I got to think too about the fact thinking about where RJ Barrett and where Quickley were in terms of value, they were not like all-time high value right now. And it's already known that other teams have tried to get OG 4 picks and it rumored multiple first-round picks. And we always never know like who's actually putting out those rumors. So that could be the other team. That could be the Raptors just trying to make it seem like, okay, this is what he's worth. But all things considered, you're trading 2 guys, one who you're going to lose in the offseason. 2, I mean, RJ, it's emotionally tough. It is difficult. A guy that you want to believe in, and a guy that you could argue still has so much untapped potential still. You never know when guys like that figure it out, and maybe he figures it out back home in Canada, and then you're like, wow, we traded for OG and we gave up two players that just blossomed. That could look tough. But in a vacuum, just looking at the values of these two guys, they were not at an all-time low, but they certainly weren't at an all-time high. And it was only going to get worse. They're going to get less leverage. And they didn't give it any picks. Any picks. So they still have 4 first-round picks to play around with. And I think I want to get to that later, like who you'd want to add now. But just thinking about the fit now, I just want to imagine now how much better the Knicks get on both ends of the floor. Now that you have the spacing from OG, one of the best corner shooters in leagues for the past 4 years, he's been a reliable 40% spot up shooter. He's a guy that shoots 44% from the corners. And that's been something that you've really been missing in that starting lineup. Like, does the Knicks offense get even better? Like, Brunson has another guy that he can really kick to and rely on. And same thing with Randall. And when he's playing in the post, this could make both ends of the floor just really unleash in a new way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what we're hoping for. Like I mentioned, like I think the Knicks believe that they have gone and got a guy that they always wanted RJ Barrett to become, and they've just gone and traded RJ Barrett to get this guy in. And in terms of like the starting unit, I think the fit is going to be great. I think he's going to be able to make an instant impact. And obviously, anytime a guy that comes in and then his main kind of forte is his defense, that's always going to fit in well with a Tom Thibodeau system. So as much as like sometimes I could question Tom Thibodeau, it's good to see that the Knicks front office is on the same page as him, and they're bringing in guys that should really suit his system. The 3-point shooting is obviously big. If he can maintain those sort of levels, that's a big plus for the Knicks. And what he can bring on defense, because the defense has struggled. It's been a bit of a struggle on that end in certain games this year. And bringing in a guy like him is gonna definitely improve things. And I also like the addition of Achiuwa, because I think at the very least he's a massive upgrade on Taj Gibson.
Oh, come on. I mean, we'll have to see some growth from Achiuwa, and I'm not going to be shocked if Achiuwa has to earn that over Taj. I'm not going to be shocked on that. But just staying on OG for a second, because I do want to get to Achiuwa. I think he's an underrated addition to this trade, especially for the Knicks. On the offensive end, we always have the spot up shooting, and I'm a little curious about what OG wants and what he'll get out of this new system with Tibbs, because he's going to have such a healthy diet of shooting. He's going to be able to bomb away as long as he wants, and that's something that he'll constantly get offense from, and he's absorbing that from Quickley. And they asked RJ to do it. Obviously, RJ couldn't do it as good as OG can, so we'll get all that. But we've known that he wants a role more on ball at times to create. And it's interesting that I do feel like the Knicks are still, especially now losing Quickley, still kind of have a need for another perimeter creator. And does OG have enough to maybe to showcase here now that he has a little bit, ironically, more opportunity here to do so, fill in RJ Barrett's role, because RJ was asked to create at times for the perimeter. Can we expect that from him too in the Knicks system, or is he just constantly going to be spotting out? That's a curious part of growth for him.
Yeah, I guess that's something we should possibly see. Yeah, he takes over Barrett's role in terms of the starting lineup. Maybe he gets a bit of a run with the second unit now and kind of takes on the mantle of IQ a little bit there as well. Like there's definitely the possibilities for that. Obviously, he didn't have the choice to say, yeah, I doubt he got to give the green light to this trade. So it's hard to say. He's definitely going to a spot where he's going to get everything that he wants. But in terms of what the Knicks have given up, I think there's definitely a chance that he gets the opportunity, especially if he plays some significant minutes with the second unit, which I think to start he probably will, given that we've lost Emmanuel Quickley.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that grows, because we do know that other part of his game he's really good at is, bullying smaller players. He can play well in the post in a not too dissimilar way that RJ Barrett does. Straight line drives, really using his strength to score inside and not really scoring in between. So maybe there's a part of his game there that we just haven't had a chance to see yet that he'll have with the Knicks. But before we move on to thinking about like who else maybe the Knicks need to kind of fill this out, because this feels like kind of this feels like to me a realization of how good this team can be. Because it's not like, all right, well, let's wait to see if RJ blossoms or if IQ blossoms. It's like, hey, we have Jalen Brunson. Like, Jalen Brunson is a all-star caliber player. He's a borderline, all NBA player. And we're getting finally some good play out of Randall. And the offense is doing well. Like, why not? Why not push for that? So this signals for me like a very different perspective than I thought. Maybe it would just be a natural process to figure out where you go with RJ in the offseason. So I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, like if they're making another move, is there somebody or a type of player that makes sense that they need?
It's I was kind of thinking about that yesterday, and there's no one I think that kind of really screams out the page. Like I was seeing a few things, a couple of guys commenting on the trade and that, and maybe trying to get a guy that can fill that gap in terms of like the bench scoring that IQ has left. Maybe someone with a bit more size. I think size is a thing that I think the Knicks are looking to add. I think a reason why they were happy to get rid of IQ is that he didn't have the size to really complement Brunson in a good way, and also was too similar of a game to Jalen Brunson. So I think they'll be looking at, there's more likely another addition in the front court rather than going towards more guards, I think. And I think they're going to look to get Grimes a few more touches now that IQ is out. And I didn't really come up with any names specifically, but I think someone with a bit of size that can fill that scoring gap that IQ has left, I think, will be the target for them now.
Maybe like an Obi Toppin type of player. Yeah. But I think Achiuwa could surprise, and I'm super hot and cold with Achiuwa because he has such flashes of like insane athleticism. Like when he attacks a closeout, and he doesn't look 6'8". I mean, dude plays like 7 foot when he's going downhill. Now you don't see that from the interior defensively, which makes me wonder if he's gonna have kind of the Cam Reddish treatment, where Tom Thibodeau's like, hey, like you can't do what I want you to. Okay, then sorry, no minutes. Taj Gibson is gonna play drop defense well. He's going to defend the paint well, and he's gonna do his job, and he's gonna do it exactly how Tom Thibodeau wants, and he's not gonna complain. But I think Precious Achiuwa is a very different type of player that could do some of that, and I think that he's never reached a point of being like an elite shooter, but they've never had a big that could really stretch the floor like that. And Achiuwa is someone who he will not be shy about shooting threes, and that could really be an interesting dynamic to this offense if you start to spread the floor like that, where you have a 5 who could shoot the 3, and then you have Randall in the post, and you have Anunoby who can shoot the 3, Grimes, and then finally you like that missing little piece there could put out lineups where you actually have some unbelievable spacing for both Brunson and Randall. But that all begs the question of, number one, if Achiuwa gets minutes to even like get to a comfort spot there, acclimating to where his teammates want him to take those shots, and that's something that we saw in Toronto. He wasn't always in the right positions to, create from the perimeter. But I'm really curious to see if he's that guy. If you want a front court addition, if Achiuwa was that, or if he's just kind of a throw-in.
Yeah. I mean, like obviously, it's kind of looking at it. Obviously, the Knicks need to add a bit more size. Obviously, we don't know for sure. Maybe Mitchell Robinson's gone for the year. We're not we don't know for sure yet. Like they got that exemption to sign another player. And I think they were just looking to add that little bit more size to the team. Obviously, in an ideal world, they wouldn't have had to bring back Taj Gibson as much as he just does a solid job. Precious Achiuwa should be in a position to come in and take the minutes off of Taj Gibson. If he's not doing that, then it's a failure on his part, and also makes you kind of think that the Knicks that was just an addition just to make the money add up,
Yeah. What about Sims? Is Sims, this is my Knicks ignorance, is Sims out for a long period of time? Because he's someone too that
No, I think he's back. He's back now. I think he was. I don't think he played last night, but I think he was back on the bench last night at least.
Yeah, because then you got two. That's where the Knicks start to get a little bit fun, and you're gonna have two hyper athletic, smaller bigs that can play in the pick and roll that or can really run the fast break, and then you can start to really play a lot faster. Then you start mixing that in with Josh Hart, who we know he likes to play fast. But I guess I don't think about the front court. I think a little bit about, if on the perimeter you have Jalen Brunson who's getting doubled, yeah, your release valve is to the perimeter to OG. He's going to shoot the three, or you throw it to Randall. But I think there's another need for a guy who can create his own shot and can get downhill and start to create some offense. And I'm really, does the name Jordan Clarkson, does that interest you at all? That's a guy who I think is ultimately his time in Utah will be done. And they need to make room for other guys to grow there. And he's cheap. I think he'll come on the cheap. And he's a guy that is always going to be able to create something off the dribble. And he also has shown that when you need him to be a playmaker, he can do that. But he doesn't need to be the guy. He doesn't need to be that. He doesn't need to have the ball all the time. And he's shown that both in his time in LA and especially now in Utah.
That's definitely an end interest me. He's definitely, even if it's not to the New York Knicks, if he can get to a team that's a competitor, I think it's a bit crazy that he isn't on a team that is looking to compete, given what he can add. Like it's a bit of a shame that he's playing in Utah, which is a team that are in rebuild mode. So yeah, I think that's actually a very interesting name. I think that'll be a nice addition to the team, and a guy that you can rely on to deliver on the offensive end consistently, and a lot cheaper than what they probably would have been with having to pay IQ.
Or home run swing. What say you for LaVine? But that would cost you first round pick. That's when you're digging into maybe three first round picks, because they're not going to be great first round picks. And obviously Evan Fournier is just he may be. I'm really curious if Fournier ends up just getting re-signed on a team option next year, just to keep him around as like basically a trade exception. Like he is a walking trade exception at this point. But what say you kind of selling most of the farm for LaVine and saying, all right, this is our core: LaVine, Brunson, Randall, OG, and then you kind of fill out the rest, whoever's playing the front court.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I don't really like the idea of going all in on LaVine, because I'm like, how much does he really push the needle for us? But at the same time, who knows if that needle pusher is out there at this moment in time? The player isn't there, and if we have the opportunity to go get him, it's not going to make us a worse team. So, and for the most part, if we're just giving up the draft capital, maybe, yeah, why not just pull the plug and just go all out on that and see where we go from there? I mean, that's unfortunately the real guy that we really need. He's just not there. The player is not there, and I don't see a huge difference between, say, waiting on maybe Donovan Mitchell becoming available and Zach LaVine. Really, I don't think there's a ginormous difference there. So, as much as I wouldn't be saying, oh, we need to do it, I don't think it'd be a crazy move either.
Yeah, I think that always makes me think about the guys that you already mentioned, like Grimes. And is that the guy that's on your roster? So like, it's besides Grimes, anyone else on this roster that ends up putting things together in a meaningful way that you don't have to make a trade right now? There's no right now trade. Is it Grimes? Do you really think he's going to show a lot more with more touches, more shots? And they just re-signed McBride. Surprising move. I think a guy that other teams are interested in as well. Do you feel like that's the departure of Quickley, the departure of RJ Barrett? Is that not only going to allow OG to grow in his new environment, but also these guys too?
You had to think so. I think obviously the way that it kind of went down, maybe it was just coincidence, but the fact that like as soon as they trade off of IQ and RJ, they re-sign Sign McBride, and there's talk instantly about how Grimes is going to get more of a chance within the offense. So yeah, you have to think that that's something that they're looking towards, but also something they know they don't have to rely on, and then if it's not working, they can move from there.
Yeah. Let's think about our former Knicks. I think, for the Knicks, just closing on them, like I feel like this really makes their chances of making it deep in the playoffs a lot higher. Just given the perimeter defense you get from OG, I think that takes them up a whole another notch. You are right; they're missing kind of that front court piece. If Mitchell's gone, they really need to find a way to defend the paint. But huge for them making it further in the playoffs. For the Raptors, I am intrigued. I'm very curious how this offense is going to look. Um, how do you feel about RJ's place now? He's going to a spot where Scotty is the number one guy, so RJ's still not the number one guy. He's also going to a team that really desperately needs a perimeter-oriented point guard. So Quickley, ironically, seems to have a more natural fit on this team than RJ. They have not traded off of Siakam yet, a guy who has started to take a backseat to Scotty. Is he also going to relinquish some playmaking to RJ as well? To be continued. So how do we feel about where RJ's place is, and what can he do on this team to like reclaim some value, some belief in him? It seems like being traded away from the Knicks, the people who really believed in him, that's got to be tough for him.
Yeah, I assume it's hurting, but like I mean, like going back home, he's going back to play for his for the only team from Canada in the NBA. He's going to a situation that's not quite as hostile and difficult as it appears to be sometimes when you're playing in New York. And I guess like the instant aim is to go and fill in seamlessly for OG. That's like the beginning spot. Like I was mentioning, like it kind of just feels like the Knicks have added a player that they thought RJ Barrett was going to become in OG Anunoby. So can he now go into Toronto and really fill that gap? Maybe. Maybe the having that bit of pressure off, maybe going into a situation where there's not as much expectations, maybe that could be a big plus for RJ Barrett. But early signs, it's just going to be a wait and see on RJ, see how he fits in, see how different it might be if they ultimately trade off with Siakam. I think I'm definitely more excited about the instant fit of IQ than I am about RJ Barrett in Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a guy that we can talk more on here, to be honest, because with RJ, it is a wait and see. And with RJ, it's such a tired conversation because it really just comes up to, can he be a spot up shooter? And he answered that for a couple months, and then December, that just disappeared. And shooters go through slumps, and if he is a shooter now, maybe this is just a slump and he'll come out of it. But that's just always gonna be the one thing that holds him back, and will hold him back with Scotty. Like you need to surround Scotty with shooters. The Raptors know that, and the Raptors got rid of their arguably most reliable shooter. And I just don't think that RJ will survive there if they don't trade off Siakam. So I can't imagine they won't trade off of him. But the most exciting pairing here is really, Scotty and Quickley. Like these two guys who are just instant offense, the way they can create for themselves, and the way that how dynamic Quickley can be as a starter. I mean, we've seen his numbers that he put up last season. He slots into the starting lineup here, and what do we expect from him off the bat? Like, is he closer to a Sadiq Bey kind of deal, where Pistons didn't want to trade him, and then they didn't want to sign him, they didn't want to pay him, give him that role, and now we kind of know, oh, okay, Sadiq Bey is who he is. Or is it closer to a Harden kind of thing? OKC gets up Harden and then he explodes on his own. Not to say that he's going to be that level of player, but kind of the ascent. What do we expect?
Yeah, I mean, I expect him to offensively. I expect him to be quite similar, but of course, coming in as a starter, which is what I kind of hope to see him come in and be the starting point guard in Toronto. He's obviously going to have to be a bit better when it comes to sharing the ball. So you're looking at him and thinking he's averaging 15 points per game off the bench in New York. He becomes a starter. He's playing 30 plus minutes a night in Toronto. You really like to see him become a 20-5 guy, a guy that really gets a lot of shots. He still stays effective shooting the three ball. And obviously, he's going to bring it hard in the defensive end, which is also always a big plus when you get that out of your point guard. But offensively, yeah, I'm not going to go crazy and say he's instantly going to become like get their perennial all-star sort of level. But I think I'm excited to see what he can do in a freer sort of role, in a role where he's expected to do more.
I want to just like go through some experiences we had last year with him. So as a starter, he averaged 22.6 points, 5.4 rebounds, 5.1 assists, 21 games. He had a 36-point game against San Antonio. He had a 38-point game against Boston. He had a 40-point game against Houston, 39 points against Indiana, although I guess everyone can drop 40 on Indiana. And then another 30-point game against Indiana. Like he's poised to do stuff like that for the rest of the season, I think, if you give him the minutes. And just thinking of the actions that you can run off of Scotty, off of Quickley, with how quickly they can get downhill and really just suck in the defense and create spacing for others. Maybe that's why it's so imperative that RJ, if he can get back to shooting form, like when he was shooting 40% from three earlier on the season, that's where things will start to shift from him. Because both of these guys, off of dribble handoffs, off pick and roll, I mean, just very simple stuff that they can run next to each other. That's just going to create so many opportunities for other guys. And this is where like trade Siakam and bring up Grady Dick. Who cares if you guys suck? Like, is Grady Dick really not able to play in the NBA right now? Like, where is this guy? And that's gonna be such a whiff on a draft if he really, as a rookie, at no point if he can even be just play 15 minutes in a game, because this is what you need to start to see. But super excited to see both Scotty and Quickley and what kind of offense that they can put together, and then defensively too, like how dynamic they're going to be on the perimeter. I think that they really got a great return. I mean, just unbelievable return for OG. Even though you didn't get your first round picks, I think you got a guy that a lot of teams believe like is going to get a lot better, and it's going to hurt for the Knicks like to see him do better. But bigger picture for team success with that. But yeah, man, just those two guys together on the court, I think they could be a duo for half a decade.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was like, I'm gonna hate it. Like, or as much as I was losing my faith in RJ over the last while, IQ is a guy that I really loved in New York. Like I mentioned before, I really wanted him only to leave if he was going for a legit star. But I get why they had to make the move. I just really hope he can thrive now in Toronto. I think that I'm excited to see where his career goes from here, because IQ is a guy that I always believed in.
So we talked about Siakam. Do you have any other ideas now? It seems like the market hasn't shifted in any meaningful way. They're still shopping him, and we know that they need to. They're moving towards the youth movement. They don't. Siakam is going to leave in the offseason, and that also leaves me to question, what is his actual value? Like, who needs to sign for him, either to be more competitive this season or to, avoid a bidding war if they can't afford to do so in the summer. And it's tough. Do you have any teams on the top of your head or is that list not changed?
The Hawks, I feel like he's going to end up in Atlanta. I feel like they're in a position where they need to make a change. Obviously, it's been a pretty poor start to the year so far for them. They've had a few little runs, but for the most part, they're still pretty well below 500. They're still losing a lot more games that they maybe expect them to be winning. I don't know what for sure would be the package. Would it definitely make a huge change at Atlanta? I'm not 100% sure, but I think what he can bring would be a positive addition, and it depends what they have to give up. But I think Atlanta is a realistic spot and a team that are going to be needed to make a move.
Yeah, maybe they now the Hawks have a different situation where Jalen Johnson's arrived and he's their third best player, probably. I'd say definitely. So what does that do for Hunter? What does that do for Bay? Maybe Toronto just needs to get guys, hey, you spot up and shoot. That's fine. We need to grow this system here, and you just need some. Maybe they don't need to make a huge splash. The Hawks, they don't have to give up anything too crazy, and then you just need to trade some perimeter guys for that. Maybe
If they
Bogdanovich.
if they got Hunter two with Hunter and two firsts, would
No,
that be too much?
Bogdanovich. I'm asking, like, I'm demanding Bogdanovich. I
Yeah,
need
fair.
getting a dynamic shooter,
Hmm.
especially from three. The guy who's gonna shot that's the exact kind of player the Hawks are gonna want, or the Raptors are gonna want.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
call. Yeah.
and I think that the reason the Hawks keep coming to mind is just the desperation factor, because Pacers make so much sense, and then like, if you're a Jalen Smith guy, maybe you're like, all right, Jalen Smith, new situation, that's gonna be somebody that maybe is gonna make some sense for the Raptors. Um, and then you think about, what do the Pacers need? A two-way player like Siakam, who's going to bring it on the defensive end and then give them presence inside, plays their style too, the way he gets up and down the court. Makes a lot of sense basketball-wise, but then you think about the economics of it. And the Pacers, I feel like we've come to a point where the Pacers they're not coming down to earth per se, but it's not like they're a rivals right now.
Mm-hmm. True.
They know that they still need to grow, and they don't need to do anything right now. They don't need to be trigger happy, because they also have cap space. They could just sign. They could just sign it. Be like, all right, we'll see what we get, and then we don't have to trade anything. We'll just wait till the summer. We don't need to win right now. And and I never know what to do. I feel like the Warriors are becoming like the new Knicks Twitter fan base, where anyone comes available, like, all right, that we're trading for. I don't know how. Would that make any sense?
I mean, the Warriors are pretty desperate. I mean,
Make it make sense. Oh, that makes sense. The desperation, that makes sense.
desperation is where like that's a big part of the trade deadline for the most part. Desperation plays a huge factor. I mean, yeah, I mean they don't like they probably end up trading off of Andrew Wiggins in that sort of situation. So I mean, like Siakam wouldn't be someone that would be like taking away from what the Warriors' best guys do. I think he'd be a positive addition. Is it something I could see them doing? Probably not, but I'm not sure what the package would really look like. I guess it would include Wiggins. I don't know what they have in terms of draft capital. I can't imagine that they have the player assets to trade alone for Siakam. I don't know, but like, would they have to include Wiggins and like a Kuminga? That would be
Oh
too
yeah.
much.
Oh,
No.
absolutely. Like, would that be too much? No, that'd be fair, because Wiggins sucks,
Yeah,
and
that's
Kuminga
true.
hasn't proven anything. Like, and I hate saying that, because I was so
Getting all the
happy.
Canadian boys back in Toronto, you
No,
know.
dude, that they need to do that already. Can we create a package with Shea? Obviously not. I'm kidding. Nobody quote me. But I just listing out desperate teams like that. Maybe that's there. Obviously the dream team. In my mind, dream team. If we're just gonna name one, I'll have you name one too. The one that maybe makes sense, maybe it doesn't. But the team that I'm like, all right, they with Siakam, maybe they win a championship. I know one, and it is the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks.
Mm-hmm.
If that got sorted out, which it's a dream. It's a dream. That is a team that I think would just take off. That would just take off.
That's a great show. I love that.
Do you have another one?
No, that has me excited now. Hearing saying that, like, that'd be a team I'd love to see Pascal Siakam in Dallas. Like we mentioned, they finally made a good draft after drafting Doncic when they got Derek Lively. If they could find a way to make a move for a two-way player like Pascal Siakam, I think that'd be huge for Dallas, and I think that's something that they should be considering without going. No, actually, whatever, go crazy. They have Luka Doncic; he's generational talent. They got to do whatever they can to get winning as soon as possible.
But I think the random team too. Last one first, Siakam on my mind. You just gotta survey the league. Who has what you need for Scotty? Because I'm curious, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna just look for first round picks? Or are they gonna look for talent that makes sense? They're obviously not in win now mode. I think they could do both if they're talking to the Nets. The Nets have a lot of perimeter wings. They have a lot of guys who can space the floor. play defense, and play around Scotty.
They've got like 6 of the same player. Of basically, that's the
they
Nets in a nutshell.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, they love Cam Johnson. They love him. But do they want to? They want a team that wins. They don't want to just be building for the future. They've made that clear. Mikal Bridges is clearly their guy. Is there a deal there? They have, in terms of
Mikal
what they
Bridges is
actually
clearly
lose.
their guy, isn't he? What about Cam Thomas, man?
I've, maybe next year Cam Thomas will have his full arrival. You know, um, but that the Nets are, I feel like, a dark horse team that they have a lot of assets that make sense
In
for
terms of
staying.
fit for Toronto, I think the Nets would definitely be a great team to make a deal with. If they could get a guy like Cam Johnson, I think that'd be a perfect fit in Toronto. In terms of like the timeline and everything as well, yeah, I think that'd be a dream move. But at the same time, I'm like, will the Nets be aggressive enough to make that deal happen? I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I think that's an interesting shout. In terms of what makes sense most for Toronto, I think the Nets are definitely a team that they'd like to make a trade with.
Yeah, and the Nets a team that, like, I have so much talent, so much of too much of the same talent.
Mm-hmm.
And the Raptors, ironically, same problem. And the Nets have shown that they are really good offensively and somehow have a collection of, I mean, Mikal Bridges is a guy who's considered for Defensive Player of the Year. You know, Dorian Finney-Smith, like the anchor of a randomly good Mavs defense not too long ago. Cam Johnson, part of the reason the Suns are so good defensively. And they have gone and on. Nick Claxton, a guy who was at one point leading the league in blocks. So too many good defensive players to not mix in something and think like, hey, mixing ingredient. Like, you just got to find that, like, there's the desperation teams and the realistic teams who, if the Nets wanted to say, hey, we want to be competitive in the playoffs, let's get Siakam, throw some young players plus Cam Johnson Toronto's way, and I don't see why that wouldn't be a better deal than what Atlanta could do, than what the Pacers wouldn't do, than old Andrew Wiggins and Kuminga who can't shoot. There's very few teams like the Nets that could sell exactly what they're looking for. But I rest my case. Brooklyn Nets, watch out for them. Watch out for them. Not any noise, no reporting, but too much sense, both from team perspective and player fit.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's a good shout. Those last two shouts on your part, Dallas Mavericks in terms of a team that should go for him, and the Nets in terms of a team that really makes sense for Toronto. That's good work. Good, great work out of you there, Chris. You got me thinking there now.
Off the cuff. There you go.
And then I guess the final point we should make then, what do we grade this deal for the Toronto Raptors?
I would say so you're the hard grader. I'm the easy grader. All right, wins it with Quickley, absolutely. With Barrett, let's go with. I'll stick with the B plus because they didn't get any first round picks. I'll stick with the B plus because they didn't get any first round picks, and I'm not sure. I'm more confident that Barrett will become a problem in terms of trying to fit with their guy, who is Scotty, than I am that he will evolve into the guy they need him to be, a la the last 3-4 years in New York. So B plus or B plus, but Quickley, man, that just the allure of that. I think I got to stick with B plus.
Yeah. I think I'd agree there. I think I agree on everything you're saying there about RJ as well, unfortunately. But then let's move on then. A few of the fast break points. The real reason we had to hop on today, the Detroit Pistons finally won a game of basketball. Woohoo! It only took them 29 games. So the streak is over 28. They don't hold the sole record by themselves in terms of straight losses, but damn did they make hard work of that against the Raptors. They was like pulling teeth there coming towards the end of that game. Like it's just watching like the last 30 seconds took like half an hour. Like, is this game ever going to end? The Raptors just kept on trucking, but thankfully for the Pistons, they finally picked up that W. My question for you now is, how long is their next losing streak going to be?
I don't. My question was going to be, have they figured things out a little bit? They've been more competitive. Look how they played against the Celtics. And I believe in what we've seen from Cade. I don't think that they will lose more than 5 games in a row for the rest of the season.
Okay,
Is
that's
is
very
that a hot
interesting.
take? Is that a hot take? That
That's
shouldn't be a hot
slightly
take.
hot. I mean,
That shouldn't be a hot
it's
take.
slightly hot. It's just funny that they're not as far behind a few teams as you think they should be, having lost 28 straight games. Like they're not too far behind, like the Spurs or the Wizards or even a
Putrid.
few other teams, which is just it's just funny when you kind of only have thought about the Pistons as just being so far and away the worst team by a million miles, and it's really just not the case. But props to them. They finally got a W. Let's see
Look at
where they
Cade though.
go to from here. Cade.
Yeah, and look at Cade. Look, I gotta point this out, man. Like last 14 games, he's averaged 25.6 points, 7.6 assists, 4.6 rebounds. And he's put up a 31-point game, 43-point game, 41-point game, a 31-point game, a 30-point game. He's really come back around, and he's now shooting 51% from the field, shooting 37% from 3 in those 14 games after a really bad slump. And this is a guy that came off of a year not playing and then came into a brand new system. Every million excuses, right, why the Pistons suck. But I think that's the biggest part. And I feel like the Pistons have uniquely set themselves up to still be bad and tank while still being like, all right, like Cade's clearly still the guy and a guy for the future. And it's not a completely lost cause. I think maybe they needed this losing streak in order to find themselves, I guess. Because I think Cade figured some things out.
Sure, let's go with that. One thing I will say is the Detroit Pistons literally have to become like the next Bulls dynasty to make up for how shit they've been over the last 10, 12 years. Like, because it has been absolutely god awful, and it's really bad that they still haven't even come close to figuring it out. But we'll move on from there. One other point I got to make, that Timberwolves Lakers game last night. You see that? That was a 3-point shot by LeBron James. They got done dirty there. That was a 3-point shot. I will say LeBron should have done better. He did have the opportunity with that last shot. He should have done better there. That last play of the game to tie it up. But yeah, they got denied a 3, which was couldn't have just given LeBron that on his birthday. No, couldn't have done that for him.
Is NBA rigged? NBA rigged.
We're getting more of that conversation in the NFL, so maybe the NBA too, yeah.
Yeah. Seriously, sports betting, man, it's a lot of money, and it's there. It's there for a reason. So I'll just leave it at that. Kind of weird that they looked at it. It's clearly a 3. I don't love that. That soured what should have been an amazing game on LeBron's birthday.
Yeah, it was good. Like, that was a great finish as well. Like, he had Anthony Edwards really kind of coming up clutch for the TWolves. That would have been LeBron likely forcing overtime in that game. Like that was awesome. Obviously, just unfortunately a disappointing call. I don't think I have anything more to add generally around the NBA at this time, but I want to finish out with a shout out to a couple of guys who really dominated in 2023. We are heading into 2024. 2023 has been a really big year for a lot of guys. So I got a list of 5 guys that have made this year their bitch. Okay, so number 5, I got Anthony Edwards. Obviously had a solid end to the year, and then really came alive in that playoffs. Even though they were beaten in 5 games by the Nuggets, that was really his coming to the scene moment there, that playoff series. And now this year he's been a huge part of why the Timberwolves are the number 1 seed, averaging 26, 5 and 5, continuing to rise in this game. His profile rises kind of every time you watch him play, and this year has been a real big breakout year for him.
I gotta give are we just going player by player? Ant's there. I'm happy you said Ant. I thought you were gonna start with Luka. I'm a little disappointed.
Nah, Luka was there before. Luka, we already knew about Luka. I've got guys that, for the most part, have really broken out in 2023, and also a couple of guys who have really kind of bounced back. I've got a list of 5 guys. I'll go through them as we go, and then you can chime in with a couple of other guys that if you think I missed anyone, okay? So you're happy with Ant anyway. You agree? You're agreeing on that.
I'm happy with Ant. I don't disagree with it. I'm happy if he's there. And I'll leave it at that. We'll see where it ends. End of the season. I'm very excited to see how he competes in the playoffs. And on the Timberwolves as a whole, maybe if we're talking about this half of the season, still gotta throw my apology up to Karl Anthony Towns. Things are still going good there.
For sure. And then number 4, I got Anthony Davis. I think he's really reestablished himself as an elite defender, and he's really getting back to his offensive game, especially in this half of the season. It started in the playoffs. He was literally the Lakers' entire defense, a huge part of why they were able to get to the Western Conference Finals this year. He remains pretty much their entire defense, but he's also really getting that bit more confidence back in his shot. He's averaging 25, 12, 2.5 blocks. He's shooting 55% from the field. And when you watch him now, you believe in him more. You believe he's going to deliver not just on the defensive end, but also consistently as a offensive piece. And that changes things for the Lakers, as much as they're still kind of in the mid in terms of their record at the moment. When you see AD looking like a legit offensive star, that really changes the ceiling for them.
Dude, I still can't believe how healthy he's been too. Like that's been the biggest part.
Touch wood.
I don't know if listen, I'll give it to Anthony Davis. I'll give it more so to Anthony Davis medical staff. I don't know what they're doing, but somehow he's not crumpled to some random injury, and he's being him.
It just feels like he's playing through it more. I think he's kind of just getting over, like, screw that, like sitting out for every little niggle. I feel like he's had some knocks and hits this season. I feel like he's just kind of stepping up and playing through things a bit more, which is obviously good to see. That's what the best guys have to do. If you're not going to play through injuries, you're not going to have much of a career in the NBA with how long the season is.
Yeah, Anthony Davis making a top 5 list here. Okay,
yeah,
first for him for a minute.
Yeah, and then number 3, obviously a bit of an obvious one, but a guy that I think is worth mentioning, Joel Embiid. Won the MVP last year, and he has impressively improved so far this year. He's averaging 35, 12, and 6 and 2 blocks a game, shooting 54% from the field. Really kept this 76ers team just off the top in the Eastern Conference, when I think a lot of people thought we were going to see a slight drop off from Embiid and a big drop off from the 76ers. He's thriving under Nick Nurse, and this whole year has just been unbelievable. Him, obviously, people are going to say he didn't deserve that MVP. No, you could say you think Jokic should have won it. You can't say that Joel Embiid did not deserve to win the MVP award. The numbers that he put up, the way he led that Sixers team, and the way he's doing it again this year, 2023 has been an unbelievable year for Joel Embiid, and now it's just hoping that in 2024 he has a legit playoff run.
Dude, the scoring is insane. One thing I will say though is games like Minnesota, like when they play the Timberwolves, like it's so hard to watch at times because he's just getting the line 18 times. It's like I can't do that. I can't do it, but dropping 51 points against a team with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. He's going up against 2 bigs. And then after that, there's nobody who can defend him. And then the fact that he dropped 38 points in 36 minutes against the Hawks. Obviously, who's defending him in Washington? Dropped 50 points in 38 minutes. 30 points in 31 minutes against the Lakers. 35 points in 37 minutes against the Thunder. Like, he's just the rate at which he's scoring is insane, and I feel like he's going to continue to keep it up, just given how just easy it is for him to get to the line. But it is crazy though. If he misses 11 more games, he won't be able to be voted for MVP.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And he's not going to be MVP this year for that reason. Like, they need to rest him. Like, he needs to be ready for the playoffs. Who cares about an MVP award? And it'd be great, but at this rate, I don't think he's going to get there.
Yeah, and I think there's a good chance I think he's going to miss another couple of games, I think, with this ankle sprain that he's got at the moment. So, yeah. And you think, is he only going to miss like 9 games between now and the end of the season?
No chance.
It's definitely going to be tough. But in terms of what he's delivering on so far in 2023, he's been huge. And like you said, as long as he's ready for the playoffs, that's the next step in his career, is actually putting together a healthy, legitimate playoff run. All right, the top 2. 2 is an obvious one. Mainly breaking out in the second half of 2023. Tyrese Halliburton. He's really kind of put himself on the map as a superstar in this league, averaging 25 and 12 so far this year, still shooting 42% from three. And it feels like he has like a 20-20 game every kind of couple of weeks. The care he takes with the ball, the scoring that he can provide, the way he's leading this Pacers team, and if he can just find a way to be less of a minus on the defensive end and they can get a bit more talent around them, this is a guy that can lead this Pacers team to being consistent playoff contenders over the next decade.
Yeah, and super random, but this is a guy that's been in my head since you mentioned the Pacers. I'll just put him as a footnote under Tyrese, because Tyrese has made everyone on that team better. One guy in particular who I think is making such a unspoken comeback here is Aaron Nesmith. Random. I just gotta say, because like I love comeback stories in this league, and a guy who was a nobody in a trade to the Pacers, really a salary dump, and a guy who coming into the league was supposed to be, a real contributor to the Celtics, supposed to be their perimeter shooter, defender, a guy who's gonna be, doing what Sam Hauser is doing essentially, but at a higher level. All of a sudden, now he's got his shot back on 4.6 attempts. He's shooting 49% from three, a career high. And just watching him play defense, man, they're throwing him on fours. They're throwing him on. He's throwing him on Giannis. The stuff he's doing on the defensive end, how hard he competes at it, like his pathway throughout the league has turned him into a really tough defender. And now that he's getting a shot back, I mean, Pacers in general, super impressed. Tyrese making everybody better, and cool to see that. I'll give one of my shout outs to him.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely been a good turnaround piece for them, and obviously one of the few guys on the Pacers team that actually likes to play a bit of defense. But on Tyrese, like obviously the other night he had like the first guy since the only guy other than Chris Paul, I should say, that had a 20-20 game with 0 turnovers. Then he became just the third guy after Johnson and Stockton to have back-to-back 20-20 games. So like what this guy is able to do in terms of his all-around game is just so impressive on the defensive end. And I think the record all time is 30 assists in a game. I'm gonna claim here now that Tyrese Halliburton will beat that at some point in his career.
That if anyone's gonna do it in this league, it'd be him, right? And I believe it. What else you got?
Number one, the obvious one. There can only be one man.
Obvious.
2023 has been his year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
There you go. Thank you. Right answer.
He has turned himself into not just a superstar, but now one of the untradables. I think he's got to that sort of level. Like he is the franchise. He would cost too much that no one could offer enough to what he could bring. Like what he did last year was exceptional. Now he's doing the exact same thing, but in a winning team. And that's a whole different thing. And it's unbelievable that he's able to do that. Averaging 31, 6 and 6, leading the league in steals. He has like 40 more steals than like anyone else in the league. Still shooting really efficient from the field. And now the Thunder are winning games. And the way he's leading this team, you're literally like, oh my God, are they already a legit playoff contender?
Does that make him a MVP? Like in terms of narrative, where does that put him in an MVP situation? Because
got to be up there. He's top 3. It's him, Luka, and probably Jokic. Obviously, Embiid is there too, but obviously, like you mentioned about the games being played, I think him and Luka, as long as the Mavs can sustain the top 6 sort of push in the West, I think him and Luka are the guys to really watch out for.
Yeah, you just look at the defensive end too. When it just comes to voting. And just it's going to be so fascinating to see, because it'll come down to, narrative. It's all going to come down to narrative. That's what it does, because all these players are amazing. But what he's doing with the young team and the jump that the Thunder are going to make from being out of the playoffs too. And we talked about this before. And I still couldn't think. Did you think of anybody? What team has not made the playoffs and then made like a deep run? Like who has made the Western Conference Finals? And I only can think of LeBron going back to Cleveland and then ending that drought.
The Suns were one. Obviously, they brought in Chris Paul, but the Suns were kind of the main one that like I came up with. Like I was looking back over the last like 20 years, like there's no one really that hasn't made like a bringing like LeBron come back to Cleveland is like that was obviously next level. But like outside of that, there was no one that had like everyone had at least kind of gone to the playoffs the year before and got knocked out in the first round before going on a deep run outside of the Suns. But they obviously did it by bringing in Chris Paul.
Yeah, the only other close thing to like an organic jump is maybe the Warriors. I'm trying to remember
Yeah,
what kind of
yeah.
jump they had from not making the playoffs, and then there was it the 73 win? It was the year before the 73 win season, I think. But
Yeah, they won the title before
them,
they did that, yeah.
yeah. What was that? Was that the year? Now this you got to remind you're the NBA history person here.
Yeah,
My
so they won
memory
the
is
title in 2015 and then they won the 73 games the following season.
so we're in the playoffs the year before that title year.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
This will be material for another day because you
Yeah.
can't.
But in
Can't pull
terms
that
of,
out. But
let's just talk about the Thunder. Like the only thing that I'm looking at them now is we saw a young team uh really struggle in the playoffs due to a lack of rebounding in the Minnesota Timberwolves a couple of years ago.
True.
The Thunder are not a very good rebounding team. They're actually a very bad rebounding team. It would be interesting to see how big of an impact it would have on them. Like we saw with the Timberwolves, they really struggled. Rebounding was a massive part of why they lost to the Grizzlies that 2 years ago in the playoffs, and they looked to amend that by going all out and getting Rudy Gobert. So it would be very interesting to see if the Thunder suffered a similar sort of fate.
Yeah, that I mean I've been thinking about that this whole season really because that's the only big detraction I can take from the Thunder. 29th in opponents offensive rebounding, 29th in opponents offensive rebounding percentage, and they are 29th in defensive rebounding percentage, like all around the board. And it's so they don't have like that big. They need like a guy like a big guy, like a true big, someone who can really put a body on it, like their Steven Adams type of guy, who can his job is box out and let the other guys get a rebound and run. But really, besides that, I mean, I think they're geared up to. I think they have enough, especially because you say that you got Shea, who's gonna argue to be the best player on the floor no matter what, whoever you're facing. And then you got Chet, the guy who's gonna be the best defender in the series, and you build around him. You probably are putting up the best defense in a series, unless what I mean. Look, they beat the Nuggets, and they've created a system against the Nuggets. And it works. Having Chet off ball to really help on Jokic, like that is something that has worked, and not a lot of things have worked against Jokic. Very few things, almost nothing has worked against Jokic, and they found something 2 times. So I really can't help but think that this is going to be the best turnaround in maybe NBA history if they make it pretty far in the playoffs for a team that has not made a big trade, has not made a big signing. It's just their guys.
Yeah, like people would probably mention like Shea, but like no, like he's basically organically grown through that system. Like when they got him, he was a rookie who was just after averaging 11 points per game. He has grown into this star in OKC. They have developed him into this elite player. So this is about as organic as it comes so far. Maybe they will make a move because obviously they have all the assets in the world to be able to make moves, and maybe they'll need to. But even without doing it, you still have to think that they could definitely be a team that wins at least one playoff series, if not more.
Yeah. So that was gonna be my main shout out. I mean, what else is more to say? He's putting up Michael Jordan numbers again. That wasn't a flash in the pan. There was a time where, him and DeJounte Murray were kind of on the come up together, and both guys to look out for, most improved player type of guys. Fast forward to now, and you're talking about him in the same likes of Giannis, and the same likes of Luka, and the same likes of Jokic. He's an MVP caliber player, and it's crazy to see it continue. And the aforementioned Anthony Edwards, I think that's where he's going as well. So I think you nailed it on the head. Anthony Davis was kind of that was a charity. That was a charity pick. Congratulations for being you and not being injured. Otherwise,
Hey.
I like your list.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
You're just happy that he's not injured on your fantasy team. That's why he's there.
Yes, of course. That is obviously the most important thing. Forget about the success of the Lakers or his personal success. It's all about the success of my fantasy team, and he's